Welcome to the Gals Guide to the Galaxy podcast, where a group of gals gather for you one cool thing around our topic of the month. Is it ancient history? Is it breaking news? Is it safe for work? Well, that's up to each gal. All we know is that...
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Welcome back. I'm Bonnie, and I'm joined by Leah and Lisa talking about our one cool STEM thing. Leah already talked about the great Greta Thunberg, and Lisa already talked about the amazing Mae Jemison. But before we dive in, let's get to know something random about our gal pals. I want to know, which emerging technology are you most excited or terrified about?
I am most terrified of Alexa. Because I firmly believe Facebook has too much power. Like, I've already kind of like seen it where, you know, I'll do a search and then suddenly there's an advertisement right there for me. Why don't you just buy the thing you were just looking at? It's like, how do you know? How do you know? There are other times where they say it's an algorithm that's just really good at guessing, but I will be talking about something not on Facebook, like physically person to person. And the phone is, of course, in my vicinity. And suddenly there's a suggestion for it on my Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. And I'm like, son of a bitch, they're listening.
And they are. And that's been, you know, like, we know that that's true. I recently got an Alexa.
Yes.
I love it very much. I renamed it Computer. So
Computer.
When I am in my bedroom and I say, Computer, please turn on the lights.
The
lights come on.
So beautiful.
Okay, so that's nice. That's
much
fantastic.
Better. It's better than the clapper, because that was my generation of like, oh, the clapper.
Yes, and I wasn't sure I wanted it, and I had been reluctant to be wiretapped on purpose in my home.
Correct. That's where I'm at.
Right. And then when I realized I'm carrying literally a wiretap device in my pocket at all times that I'm not willing to not carry, because, you know, my cell phone's my comfort device and it goes with me everywhere.
It's your boredom fighting generator.
With that, and it, you know, it has to be with me at all times.
There you go.
So I'm already being wiretapped at all times.
Right.
And at least I might as well get something out of it.
At least your lights will turn on for you and it'll play your playlist.
Well, the other thing that is really interesting about it is it's changing the way we learn. Because we now, not only can we go to Google and get the answer to whatever question we want,
which
you know,
is 50% of the time wrong, but it's okay.
It is very often wrong.
It's
but
fine. It's a start.
It is, and it depends on what kind of question you're asking, right?
Yeah.
If I'm asking, how do I pair my headset with my phone, I can probably get a useful answer to that.
This
and
is
then
true.
Get it paired and go back to whatever I was doing. Right?
How many ounces are in a tablespoon? Yeah,
right.
stuff like that. Yeah.
That sort of thing. You can now just ask it out loud.
Yeah.
So my day job is in corporate learning, and as people get used to being able to do that, it changes their tolerance for sitting in a training class to learn about. Like that's
true.
Not as useful as what can I do and get right back to my workflow.
Right, exactly.
So that's interesting. As we're used to it in our daily lives, then it becomes something we expect in other parts.
Yeah. I did take Facebook off my phone. I'm still on it way too much on my desktop. I did take it off my phone, but I still have Instagram, and those bitches are paired together. So I'm really just making Facebook work harder to get my whisper in technology.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just, you know, I want them to struggle just a little bit because I'm not on Instagram as much as I'm on Facebook.
I mean, it's definitely addictive, right? So that's...
It is.
Yeah.
So, I try my best. But I think also for me, I want the search. I want to work for it. I want to dig for it. It's like, because I think also for me, if information comes too fast, I don't remember it. And I very much love learning something new every single day. So if I can commit to memory how many tablespoons are in an ounce so I don't have to look it up again, I'll be like, I won today. But if Alexa keeps telling me, I might not learn.
Well, you know, that's a really interesting point. Einstein was famous for not remembering his own phone number, because why did he need to know it? He was to look it up.
Right.
And that's a discernment I'm used to doing when I'm working with people in the learning space of, is this something you really want people to know off the top of their head, or is this something we want
Quick
them to
access.
go look up
Right.
because it might have changed, because, you know, if it's like the tolerance of steel in a bridge, really go look that up in a book every single time.
Right.
Right, some of those critical pieces of information, just
Yes.
double check, please.
Yes, very much so.
That kind of thing.
It's gonna matter.
It's going to matter. You probably know it. You're probably right. Check it anyway. Right. So those kinds
Fair.
of things, some things you need to know off the top of your head.
Yeah.
And some things you really should just go look up, because saving that space in your brain isn't helpful.
Right. Exactly. I completely agree. What is yours?
Okay. So
Yeah.
the self-driving cars are really interesting because
Gotcha.
of the ethical dilemmas.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about
Who gets sued in that scenario?
well, and the real life trolley problem.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yes. The Good Place. Sorry. Yes.
Right, yes. But, you know, so at what tolerance do we allow the car to mow somebody over?
Right.
If it has to make a choice between probably killing the person in front of it and probably killing the person inside it, well, how do you make that choice? And
Right.
discerning those ethical quandaries
Yeah.
is really... That's not so much the technology as it is sort of the philosophy of the whole thing.
Right. It's the moral technology argument of it.
Yeah, and how do
Yeah.
we interact technology with our humanity?
Right. Very. Do you watch The Good Place, Bonnie?
No, but I was just thinking we need to make the cars take that test from Star Trek.
Kobayashi Maru,
Yes.
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 I think that will be phase 1.
But what about the good place?
The Good Place will suddenly have you be a moral philosophy professor, no matter how much you fight it. And the trolley problem is a brilliant episode where basically they play devil's advocate, and they go not real life scenario, but a pretend scenario where you have to be in a trolley and you have to decide on one track you run over one person. If you change to the other track, you mow over 5 people. So it's like, oh, okay. The easy dilemma to a lot of people is you kill one person instead of killing 5. What if you know the one person? What if that's somebody that's so it becomes, and then all of a
Might
sudden,
depend on who it is.
correct. Exactly. You might not like them and be like, easy, done. But the show has those little nuggets throughout it, and it's like, damn it. Moral philosophy. I actually love it and hate it at the same time. It's a quandary. No, I agree. That is a good one. Bonnie, what is yours?
Mine, I am kind of scared about, this is like cool in film, but I'm terrified of it in like real life use, is that like not face swap, but where you can get someone with the same facial structure and video record and put someone else's face on there. Like it's great in Star Wars.
Right.
Like did a great job with General what's his face.
Right, exactly.
But-
Tarkin.
Yeah.
And Leia, because
Yeah.
they showed her younger. Gotcha.
But I am like terrified of that coming out during like the election season.
Fair. Where it's
Like-
somebody else and they have a candidate's face on it.
Yeah.
Mm.
And, you know, that algorithm
True.
is really interesting. My husband has kind of someone that Facebook thinks is a doppelganger and will auto tag the wrong person.
Oh.
And then
Facebook.
And then Dave's a twerp, and so he started intentionally auto tagging wrong.
Oh.
And so, you know, it's
Dave.
become a thing. But it's funny because, you know, if you look at pictures of these two people at the same age, you know, then they look very similar. But right now they don't.
Right.
But Facebook still can't tell them apart. So
Interesting.
that piece of, and there's a jewelry maker right now who's making jewelry that is intended to disrupt facial recognition technology. And so it's stuff that goes over the face and changes the planes or something.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, so there are makeup techniques that do it too, right? Once we know how the algorithm works.
Right, exactly. Then we can play with it and mess with it. And then we take over Facebook. Wait. Wait a second. No, I absolutely agree too, because I was watching Star Wars and I was very much having the Jurassic Park moment of, you know, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they didn't stop and think whether or not they should. Because also I was thinking of it from a filmmaking standpoint of, was the family notified? Who's getting royalties? Because it is still a performance that is based upon a previously living person, but there is still a family and a trust. And, so it turns out the legalese, the family was involved and they did get paid and they were very much in the loop. But I'm like, okay, but what's stopping you from no?
Yeah.
And then also Carrie Fisher wasn't like super excited about it is what I read, which is, because she was like on set and she's like, yeah, no, I understand. You need it to look like 1977. And I don't look like 1977 because, time works.
Yeah.
But it was still kind of weird. And also, still to me, the faces don't line up. Like, I'm still seeing like glitches in the Matrix on those things. Like, I don't have the suspension of disbelief. The whole time I'm like, it was, watching The Lion King, the live action remake. I'm sorry. It's computer generated. It's animated.
Holy uncanny valley, Batman.
Right, exactly. And it was the same thing where it's like, I can't suspend my disbelief. I'm like, I'm sorry, lions don't talk. Their mouths don't move, and emphasis every syllable. It's like, no. So, yeah, I'm with you. It could be used for bad very quickly.
Indeed.
I remember when special effects really started getting good. I remember there was the commercial of Fred Astaire selling a vacuum. Do you remember this? And people were like, what's the line? Because now Fred Astaire can sell vacuums. And Marilyn Monroe, they had Marilyn Monroe sell something. And there was the commercial that had Christopher Reeve walking on a runway. And it's like, I don't like this. No. I know your intention is to inspire in a what if scenario, but you are selling me something. And I was like, no. So, yeah, it's very Jurassic Park. But what is your one cool thing, darling?
My one cool thing is Rear Admiral Grace Brewster Murray Hubbard.
There's a Brewster in this
I didn't
now?
know there was. I just added the Brewster. I don't usually add the Brewster.
Now, Bonnie has been painting Miss Grace. I'm not going to go through all 7 names. Miss Grace. And so she's been mentioning it on the podcast. Yes. So now we actually get to learn about this 7 named gal.
Yes.
Yay!
It's like Game of Thrones. You just keep adding titles on there.
Is her next name Westeros? No. Is she a mother of dragons?
What is she the mother first of her names?
These are, by the way, the only 2 things I know about Game of Thrones. So I'm done. I don't have HBO. So I'm out.
She's known as the grandmother of Kobol or the Grand Lady of Software.
Ooh, can she be the grand... Sorry, I'm just trying to get dragons in there somewhere.
Grandmother of dragons.
Kobol, yes.
Maybe computer dragons.
Yes, computer dragons.
Yes. We don't have a whole lot on her because she left a shortage of personal papers. So a lot of the things that we know about her, I mean, she wrote like a few, I don't know, not dissertations, but like
technical research papers.
She wrote papers.
Gotcha.
But we don't know a whole lot about her personal life, I guess. And a lot of the things that we do know come from Aiken's papers, which was her boss later.
Ah. Oh, cool. So it's filtered through her boss, who is also a dude. It's gotta be right.
Yeah. Great. Nah. Her and the guy got along real well.
Sweet. Okay. Well, that's a bonus. And rare for what time period are we talking about?
World War II.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Sweet.
Mm-hmm. As a young girl, she took apart 7 alarm clocks in the house, which was all of them, and attempt to figure out how they worked. Her mom let her keep one to take apart.
You get this one.
But I'm like that poor mom the next morning. She couldn't figure out how to get them back together. So there had to have been for either they went out and got a new one or they didn't wake up on time for a while.
She just didn't go to sleep that night.
Might be safer.
It's a good idea. Yeah.
Her father had a hardening of the arteries and had to eventually have both of his legs amputated.
Oh, no.
But her mother, drove him to work. I think he worked in insurance.
Okay.
But she drove him to work. She paid the bills. Her mother did, everything.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's pretty... So that may have been where some of her role model came from. Was
well,
from
if
her
she
mother.
can see it, she can be it.
Yeah.
That's for certain. And it's in the house with you.
She's got a couple siblings. I think a brother and a sister.
Gotcha.
She got a PhD in mathematics from Yale in 1933.
Ooh.
And in school, you could get your Mrs. degree was still this time period, or you taught.
Yeah, true.
So she was teaching math for a while. Her nephew recalls that when she was on the phone and she had enough of a conversation, she would say so and hang up.
Oh, all right then. She's like,
I'm done.
So we're done here.
Yep.
She'd love podcasting.
Efficiency, yes.
It would be this 2-minute podcast.
Yep.
By Grace.
She got married at some point. She was married to him for like 15 years. They didn't have any kids.
Gotcha.
I didn't see anywhere whether, they were choosing not to have kids.
Right.
Because back in the day, you didn't really, you got married and you had babies.
Right. That was the social
That's
pressure.
the rule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Repopulate the planet.
Right.
He was also a student and a teacher. He got his doctorate in like Renaissance literature or something like that.
Oh, that's cool.
So
Did his parents have money? Was he a trust fund
I
kid?
don't know.
All right.
But they both were like busy working all the time. So I don't know if that led to the divorce or whatever, but kind of like in the same year, she divorced him and she joined the Navy because of World War II, the
Right.
bombing of Pearl Harbor.
Gotcha.
She had a hard time getting into the Navy because she was 35 at the time,
Oh, yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
past their limit. And she was also only 105 pounds.
Oh, she was
Because
little.
she's like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She's teeny tiny.
Oh, she pocket size.
But they they eventually allowed her in, and she beefed up a little bit.
There you go.
She was like, this is a mess hall. I don't have to cook any of this food. It's just there. It was great.
Nice.
Need energy, must eat.
Right, exactly.
They sent her over to, she's mathematics, so they sent her to Harvard to work on the Mark I computer.
Nice.
One of the first computers. There's a whole bunch of computers that are all being developed at the same time,
In
and
different
because of the
places.
war,
Yeah.
they're not talking to each other.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to tell which one's like the first functioning working computer.
Right. Because there's
But-
the Winamac is the other one that's...
Univac,
Right.
Emac. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them.
yeah. Fair.
But the Mark I was like one of the first in the United States, and they were trying to program it to do like missile trajectories.
Gotcha.
Is what they were trying to get it to do, and this is on the room-sized computer.
The
It was,
whole
I think it's
room.
8 feet deep, and it's like 20 feet long or something,
Wow.
and 8 feet high. It's huge. Like you went into the computer
Right.
to fix it.
And what is it? Our smartphones are now like 10 times
Oh,
smarter
oh.
than that
I got
thing.
that.
Oh, so much smarter.
crazy.
Greeting cards now have more computing.
More bandwidth, more
computing. Oh, absolutely.
CPU space. Oh
Yep.
my
Yeah.
I looked it up.
goodness.
The Mark I could do 3 operations per second
Okay.
in 1944. The Univac in 1953 could do 1,000 operations per second.
Okay. Yeah.
The CDC 6600
Why didn't that name catch on?
in 1963, so another 10 years later,
Yeah.
could do 3 million a second.
Ah.
Modern computers do 1 billion per second.
Oh. Oh, that's a leap.
Yes.
Yes.
And, the difference between a million and
Wow.
a billion is
Quite a bit.
is
I was told there'd be no
huge.
math though. No, it's good. Yeah.
because what is it, like a million minutes ago is a couple of weeks ago, and a billion minutes ago is in 35 years ago, or that those
Wow.
numbers
Yeah.
aren't quite
It's
right, but it's pretty close
ridiculous.
To be able to like,
that
grasp
concept,
because
because we think of it as being not that big a jump.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Yeah.
but we think of it wrong.
Yeah, I read a
Right.
thing once
Yeah.
on like how much like $1 billion is, and they were trying to break down the math of like how much you have to earn per day
to get there.
like by the end of your life or the time you retire to have $1 billion, and how ridiculous it is
right.
for $1 billion.
Goodness.
Yeah, she's working on the Mark I with Howard Aiken, and I had something in here about him. She said he always said you can make any mistake in the world once, but if you made the same mistake twice, heaven help you.
But then you're statistically... Sorry, I'm back to my puns.
No, her and Howard Aiken got along really well.
Gotcha.
She was just said you had to know how he was wired.
Yeah, it's fair.
Computers.
I like it.
But apparently a lot of the other people that worked with him did not like him. Like he was a hard ass and just...
Dry sense of humor, maybe? Or something? Okay.
A lot of them didn't like him. In 1951, she came up with the term compiler, which is a group of library or submachines with a set of instructions telling the computer how to select them and how to assemble a program.
Okay,
gotcha. That's her big thing, is she came up with a compiler, which is a huge thing in computing. It was back in the day when they wanted to repeat a program that they knew that worked, they would have to hand copy it and then hand punch it in the tape. And because humans make errors,
right,
it's a big problem. So her big thing was to create, when you knew a program worked, you could save it in the computer and just tell the computer, hey, run that program again.
Almost like a bookmark in a way.
Yeah.
When you have this, go here.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And she got the term compiler for when people go to the library, they compile information from various books.
Oh, look at that. Oh, library references.
Libraries.
Love it.
There is a story going around that she coined the term computer bug.
Okay.
Which isn't quite accurate. Some other people had used it before, but the computer was having an error, the big room-sized computer.
Right.
And it wasn't working. They went in there, and they actually found a moth in the computer. So they actually, in the logbook, took the moth off and taped it in the logbook, and it says actual computer bug in the little notes.
Nice. She found it. She found the computer bug.
Yes.
I like it.
The first documented computer bug.
Correct. Yes. And then later they found the virus.
She did take, in the book I was reading, they were talking about she got like a gnome statue and put it in the computer somewhere because you could put things in the computer.
Well, yes, when it's that big.
Yeah. And when people would complain about like things not working, it was like, oh, it's the gremlin in the computer.
Oh. I still hear that phrase like to this day.
She got a presidential appointment in 1983. She retired in 1986 as the oldest currently serving officer, serving more than 42 years.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
She worked, she retired from the Navy or got discharged or whatever, went to the private sector, and then they recalled her back into like the reserve service.
Gotcha.
And then when she actually retired, it's a while later. There's a great interview with her on David Letterman.
That was what I was going to say. I'm like, I saw the David Letterman interview because she was still wearing her uniform, her full-on uniform then, wasn't she?
I don't know if she's wearing her uniform or just civilian clothes that are very close because she loved the structure of the military.
You don't have to think about what you're going to wear.
Yeah. There's also one of 60 Minutes of her on YouTube. And I think there's some talks that she did.
Oh, nice.
Where she's going to, because she did a lot of traveling and talking to people about the different things that were coming up in computing.
Nice. I'll make sure I put a couple of them in the show notes too, so people can find them quite easy. They're adorable. I will definitely second the Letterman one. Is like you can sense her personality. It's a very dry, a little dirty. Like she's trying not to be dirty, but she really wants to be, and it's adorable.
But she came up with COBOL, which is the computer-oriented business language. And I think I'm missing a letter there. But her goal was to basically be able to like type out in English to the computer and have it do its thing.
Gotcha.
Like that was her main goal. COBOL is still used today, mostly in ATMs, run off of COBOL.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Interesting. It lives on.
Not that I'm encouraging anyone to learn COBOL so you can hack into ATMs and have all the money spew out.
Exactly. I'm sure there's some firewalls that are still going to be protecting you from it.
But she died in 1992.
Gotcha.
And she is buried in Arlington Cemetery. So I'll be sure to look for her next time I'm there.
Yes.
And in 1995, they named a ship the USS Hopper for her.
Yay! She has a ship named after her.
And
I don't have a ship named after me,
No.
so...
The good book that I was reading is called Grace Hopper, Admiral of the Cyber Seas by Catherine Boone Williams.
That's a good title.
Yeah. There was another book that I was reading that I think is more recent. It's Grace Hopper, and it was written by a dude, but he got most of his stuff from the Aiken papers, and there's like 4 chapters just on Aiken. And he mentions that she has a drinking problem at some point, but didn't really go into detail about it. Okay, like that
Sweet.
she would just go on a drinking binge. I don't know. He didn't really. I'm like, what are you?
Right.
You got to go
Was
into
this
it.
a problem?
She was a heavy smoker. Like
so
she
was
kept
everybody
smoking.
in like the 60s and 70s,
Yeah.
it feels like.
Yeah, they were told it was healthy.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, the other one was
on quiz shows, they're like, no, I had 3 out of 10 doctors recommend smoking.
Grace Hopper and the Invention of the Information Age by Kurt W. Beer. So it was fine. Yeah, like it talked
had
about like their
information,
whole
but yeah.
group that worked on the computer, but
Gotcha.
I don't need like 4 chapters on her boss when the book is supposed to be about Grace Hopper.
Right. You
Like-
invested in the material for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does list
To
in
be
the
fair, she's not a boy.
Oh, was that his approach?
Oh goodness.
Well, then in that case.
I'm not even sure if they
need
have
to
any.
have chapters about the people around her.
Right. Yes. Because the male characters in the story give her
You have to have
validity.
a protagonist, right?
Sure. Like if they just layer in, and she had a drinking problem. You know what I mean? Sure.
But he does list in the beginning like a bunch of good places to get materials
Okay.
for her. There are the Smithsonian has a bunch of her papers, and there's supposed to be some way to access them, and I haven't figured it out. Like I
Right.
keep clicking on like the button, but then nothing loads.
The button doesn't work. No, you have one
No.
job. Maybe there's a bug in that system.
Maybe
Oh,
if it was in COBOL, it would work.
exactly. The one thing that always frustrates me with the Smithsonian, because we'll come up with gals and it'll be like, oh yes, like, you know, her aviation helmet is in the Smithsonian, and then I go there, not on display. Oh, her Susan B. Anthony's shawl, not on display.
in
And
the
I'll be
drawer.
like, oh my gosh, you have all these amazing things not on display.
On a documentary though on YouTube, I saw them like go into the back room, and it's in a
Yes.
drawer. Her
And
red
they pull.
shawl.
I want that drawer. That drawer they pulled out that's like hyper sealed, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
this is her shawl, and I'm like, I want to touch it.
I think she got to touch it in there.
Oh, that's nice. Sorry, did I
They
get a
do
little too
have,
excited about
Probably
history?
not supposed to no touch.
No touching.
I know. I just I want to be so close to history.
They
I
do
want to time
have,
travel. Is really what I want to do,
Yes.
but that's fine.
They do have that notebook with a bug in it on display somewhere.
Nice. Somewhere.
So you can't. They have it just. It's like the logbook, and they just have it open to that page.
To the bug.
Sweet. It's what everybody came to see.
But yeah, everyone should watch that video of her on David Letterman. It's like you get a really good sense of like who she was. Like we're so lucky to be able to have her on videotape.
Yeah.
Like it's super like 80s or early 90s or something. Like David
Right.
Letterman has like his hair isn't white yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Dave's
she's
looking
just-
young as
Like she's
fresh
joking
as a
around
daisy.
with him, and she does her whole millisecond wire thing, and it's great.
It is too adorable. Okay, so where do all of her names come from?
Well,
How many of
she
them are
was
middle
born
names? How many of them are like?
Grace Brewster Murray,
Okay, all right. There's 3
and then
names.
she got the Hopper from being married.
Okay,
She never dropped. She kept the Hopper,
all right.
but her rank is Rear Admiral, which isn't a rank anymore.
Gotcha.
Now it's like Admiral second half or something now.
Right.
But back when she was awarded it, it was Rear Admiral, or
I remember there
or
being,
the other way.
There's
around,
always
something
too
like
many
that.
jokes about being a rear admiral and then being in the Navy. There was too many.
Yeah. There's, I think, a clip of her getting her presidential appointment from Reagan.
Ah.
And she's like, I'm older than you. The president. It's great.
That's lovely. I think she's very funny.
She's hilarious.
She could have been a comedian if only that would have paid as regularly as the Navy.
Yeah.
That is
But she ended up writing the manual for the Mark I.
Oh, nice.
She's in the Navy. And Howard Aiken comes to her and he's like, you're going to write a book. She's like, I can't write. He's like, you're in the Navy.
Right.
Which
You will do the thing we tell you.
Yes. So she wrote the manual for the Mark I read that she also drew the little illustrations for all the little components.
Sweet.
And I thought it was like really hilarious because the book that I read and liked by Kathleen it's a Navy book about people, like different biographies of people in the Navy. So I'm like, did they assign her to write about Grace as well?
Not a bad job.
Yeah.
I'm just going to move on from Navy person to Navy person. Hey, everybody's got a wheelhouse. Having more than one is fun.
Yes. And there's a Russell in her family line somewhere. So now I got to go back and see if I'm somehow related to Grace Hopper.
That would be amazing.
There was Lovelace, and I don't think that goes back to Ada Lovelace.
That train, I mean, you'd have to go uncles, sisters, aunts, like you'd have to go off the line, and yeah. But that would be fun, though.
Yes. Well, that wraps it up for this week. Join us next week as Leah and I sit down with Lisa and talk more about Starbase Indy. Thanks for listening.
For show notes, links, and images from this week's show, visit galsguide.org. Want exclusive stuff like deleted bits and major bloopers? Become a Gals Guide patron today. Thanks for listening.